Stronger is the inspiring true story of Jeff Bauman, an ordinary man who captured the hearts of his city and the world to become the symbol of hope following the infamous 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. Please help me welcome director David Gordon Green, Jeff Bauman, Jake Gyllenhaal, who plays Jeff Bauman, Tatiana Maslany, who plays Erin Hurley, MIranda Richardson, who plays Patty Bauman, and John Pollono, screenwriter. Welcome. Jake, I'll start with you. This is the first film that you have produced through your company, 9 Stories. Can you tell me what it was about this particular story that felt like it was the perfect way to debut the new company?
You know, as every project goes, it's its own organism, and it came about in a very circuitous way. You know, Todd Lieberman and David Hoberman at Mandeville developed the project from Jeff's book, and it really started as their baby. And then I came initially on as an actor, and then through the world of independent financing and the world of independent filmmaking, you know, it looked at many different times like we wouldn't be able to make this movie. And I had just recently sort of started a relationship with Bold Films, who financed the film Nightcrawler that I did, and we started a production company, and we came to them and we said, hey, can you help us out here? And they did, and through that relationship, we then started to produce the movie alongside Todd and his company. So that was sort of how it all came about. And I also think that the story itself is, you know, there's no, to me, I think I always look for stories that are relatable, but ultimately about something bigger than the story itself. And this just happened to be the perfect story in that way. It's something that no matter what you're going through, I think you can relate to. No matter who, you know, what you've been through in your life, Jeff shows you that you can get through it. And to me, I couldn't think of a better movie to put my heart and soul into.
And you two spent some time together before the shooting of the film. Can you both speak to the time you spent together and what Jake, you learned from Jeff, and what it was like having Jake Gyllenhaal shadowing you?
Don't tell the truth.
Do you want me to start off? I could start off. I mean, I think it's a real honor to be here and to have this happen. It's kind of surreal for me. Kind of just going with the wave, going with the flow, but it's great to meet Dave and John and MIranda and Tat, you know, and Jake. They're wonderful people, wonderful, you know, artists, and great at what they do. But Jake, he's awesome. I never seen any of his movies. No, I'm just kidding. I've probably seen all of his movies throughout the time, from City Slickers to I always reference Homer Hickam in October Sky, because I think that really hit me. I was probably 13 or 12 when I saw that, probably 13, and that really was great. You know, it's about rocket science and how a coal miner's kid becomes a NASA rocket scientist and an engineer, and that kind of gave me hope and gave me dreams. And he kind of does stuff like that. He plays these unsung heroes that are amazing, and he chooses great roles. So I'm a big fan of him. And then when I heard that he was playing me, I was like, what? Like, whoa. I was like, that's crazy. And then I was like, he doesn't look anything like me. He's way better looking. So I had no idea what this was going to entail. And it's just been a great journey, just getting to know him. And he's a cool dude, very genuine, nice guy.
And Jake, can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Jeff and that formed while you were trying to learn about the character of Jeff Bauman?
Well, I was really intimidated, you know, to meet Jeff. I think there's no way that any of us could really match, you know, the reality of what he and Aaron and his family went through in this journey. So I think there was a sense for me, inevitably always, of fraudulence. You know, no matter how hard we tried, we'd only get so far. So I was intimidated when I first met him, but I was surprised by the fact that we share a real similar sense of humor, even though he's a lot funnier than I am. And I also there's just something about our connection. I guess David was right in wanting me to play this part, because you know, we have a lot of similarities, the two of us, and we have since over time, and you know, going through pretty difficult questions and researching this role, you know, I've become closer to him as a result of that. You know, the irony is the friendship came from asking him the hard questions initially, you know, and we continue to do that together, you know, even to this day. I think Jeff's been through so much in his life, and he's come through, and this past year has been an amazing year for him, and I've just been honored to be there, you know, through the tough questions.
David, Jake just alluded to the casting here. Tell me what it was in him that made you want to cast him, and then sort of the broader base question for everybody here. Because this is a recent story, because the people are very much all with us who were involved in this story, tell me about playing people who will be in the audience, you know, watching this film. So David, I'll start with you, please.
Yeah, in terms of casting, I remember reading John's screenplay on an airplane, and literally I'm always casting. Anytime I open up a script, I'm always thinking of who should be in it, and you know, sometimes just scribbling an idea on a barroom napkin, I'm thinking of actors. And this, just from page one, it was always Jake in my mind, and it was the first conversation I had about, you know, when I was talking to Todd and the gang about putting the movie together. I was like, let's go get Jake. So to me, it was trying to embody both the intensity of the dramatic details of this character, something that we're going to need to go very intimate, very raw. Wanting it to feel very naturalistic, but also making sure we didn't lose the beautiful, wonderful, inviting, playful, childlike element that Jeff possesses, that I think is really difficult. It was important for me to take the humor that was certainly in the screenplay, certainly is a part of Jeff's rehabilitation in a lot of ways, is being able to use humor like that and translate that to the audience's experience, and Jake was just the perfect, kind of embodied all of that, and I knew he'd go to the depths and do the research and go to where we needed to go and make that a very personal journey. It was the first film I'd done without any of my traditional crew. I really wanted to make this an actor's journey and take these actors on a place where I'm not surrounded by familiar territory. I'm in a new community, Boston's place that I was very unfamiliar with, and really dive in deep with my commitment to the subject matter, to the city, and to the actors to try to bring these performances to life.
And for Tatiana and Miranda, can you speak to playing people who are with us still, who are going to be watching the movie? Is there a sense of responsibility that you feel to them, or is what's on the page the part that you're playing and you have to sort of divorce yourself from the real person?
Aaron Hurley, who I played in the film, was extremely generous in involving me in her life and bringing me in and answering my questions as well, and just relating as two young women, you know, in a specific time in our lives. She was just very relatable and very generous to me. And then on top of that, you know, it is an artistic interpretation, and it's. But by no means did I want to do an impersonation of her, or it was more the way that I, in my own experience, related to her and could connect to her. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the screenplay as well, is that it really makes these stories feel so relatable, regardless of the size of the sort of the outside thing. There is these small moments that happen between people that are just very human, and the other thing I would say is that Boston was an incredible place to film. I felt like this real open-heartedness in us being there and us doing these difficult things in public spaces, like doing the marathon scene and having all these extras there for 6 hours with us while we were running this last little bit, and having, you know, extras running with me the whole time who wouldn't stop, who didn't stop for 6 hours, who were so committed to this this story and wanted it to be authentic. And I think that really is Boston. Like, it felt like the kind of the spirit of the city was so alive in those moments.
I agree totally with what Tats just said. There is always a sense of responsibility, and there is the script that you're doing, the job that you're doing. For my part, I really wanted to meet Patty, but it proved to be quite tricky to pin her down, which will tell you a little bit. He's smiling already. Which will tell you a little bit about her character, and it's not to say she was running away from none of the family has run away. They've trusted us completely to take the story and let it unfold, which I think it does in a very, very beautiful way. But I didn't get to meet Patty until quite late on in the filming, and that was okay by me. I still got a great deal from meeting her, and I found her generous with her time when we were there, and sort of astonished actually at how she appears. I use that word advisedly because there's a lot going on, you know. But she completely held it together for us for a couple of hours, and for that I'm very grateful. It's my version of Patty. I hope there's enough there that is true to her experience, and I'm leaving it at that.
John, I'll ask you a variation of that same question. You wrote the script. Again, you know, recent events, people that are still with us on the stage with us here. What was your take on this? I mean, there must be composite characters in there. There must be things that had to be changed just to create a dramatic structure.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I grew up right near Chelmsford, so I kind of had it in my bones. But yeah, I mean, spending time with everybody. I mean, my goal was very much being from the area. One, not screw it up. You know, I don't want everybody I grew up with to like hate me. But you know, it was like, how do you tell? It's a remarkable story what happens, but also make the characters so well drawn that even if this crazy shit didn't happen, you'd still watch a movie with them. I mean, I'd watch a movie with the Jeff and the Aaron characters and love them. And so that was it, is to really honor them, that it's not just the hook of what happens, but who they are and how flawed and awesome they were. I mean, look, I didn't expect how close I'd get to everybody hanging out with Jeff. I mean, I was there when he had a baby. I like hang out with his dog. I mean, like you get involved in people's lives, and there's a degree of pressure where you're like, you don't want to mess it up. But I just made sure that love was always present in me, and to love somebody enough to really show them flaws and all, to show Jeff's character how hard it was. And, you know, it was really intense. And then, you know, I got to say, once David came on in this cast, it was like, I just felt so relieved that I was like, these guys are going to do him justice and really take it to that next level, which they did, you know. And I've stayed close with a lot of the family members and everybody, and, you know, everybody was really, really cool and really, you know, New Englanders are not inherently, oh, let me tell you my whole life story. It's not, I mean, in LA, you ask for directions, you learn more about the person's life than, you know, my mom. But like, you know, it was like pulling teeth sometimes, especially with Jeff. He's like, yeah, you know, whatever, it was fine. You know, that's like the degrees that he would give you. But everybody, you know, everybody was super protective, and you peeled it back, and you gained the trust. And, you know, I just kept saying, I was like, look, we just want to make the best movie possible. And everyone was on board with it. I mean, that's so strange to make a movie about your life, especially, you know, this is the worst moment of their lives in many ways. But yeah, I mean, that's like I said, handing the baton over to everybody just did like an incredible job, and it's a huge relief that it came out unbelievably.
Jeff, in the film, there are a couple of moments where you say, I don't want to relive the worst day of my life. And I wonder what your reaction is now to seeing this film and how you feel about it.
I mean, last night was amazing, seeing it with like 2,000, 2,500 people, and hearing all the reactions. And you know, when people are crying, I'm crying. And you hear people laugh and crack up, you know, great jokes, and that's pretty much my life in a nutshell. You know, you cry, you laugh, and you keep on moving forward. And seeing the movie, it brings me back, especially the relationship between how Jake and Tatiana captured Aaron and I. That's probably the toughest part, and I mean, obviously the bombing's hard, and seeing myself ripped apart on the ground like that, and seeing other people around me, it does bring me back. And how Dave did it, like sequenced it three times throughout the film, pretty brilliant. It's really cool how he did it. But definitely the hardest part is reliving the relationship in the hospital scenes with Aaron and I, and how close we got during that position, and you know, it's just it's hard. It's hard to watch, but it's really good. It brings me back to like I was there, and I hope it it does that for everybody. It gives gives someone a little piece of my story to take home with them. And
Well, what I won't. I'll paraphrase this because I won't get the line right. But you say something in the film like, "People can be inspired by me because if I can get through this, then they can get through. They can push through whatever it is in their lives that is keeping them down." And I thought that was sort of the message that I walked away from with this movie.
Yeah, I get that a lot. People come up to me and they're like, "Man, that was me. I would never do. I couldn't be where you are right now." And I'm like, don't ever say that. It's like, yeah, you definitely could. It's just you don't really when you're in this position, you don't have a choice. You're not going to sit home and not walk and not leave your house. I mean, as much as I want to sometimes, I can't. And I have a daughter now that's 3 and a dog that's 4. And as much as I would like to sit around and not do anything, they're in my face. And they're like, "Yep, let's go." So it's everyone can get through anything, and it's hard. Life isn't easy, and that's what this movie shows. It's not perfect.
Am I right in saying that the first shot was at the Bruins game? Is that on the first day? So can perhaps you 3 talk about what that was like? Because again, you were there for that, right, Jeff, on set?
Yeah, I got kicked off my own set that day.
Did you? And David, why did you kick him off the set?
No, it wasn't. It was just some kid. He was like, "You got to leave." And I was like, "What, me?" Yeah. But
can you tell me a little bit about shooting that scene? Then I'll turn it over to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, day one we started with it was certainly for some logistical reason and the availability of the stadium, and that we were going to incorporate footage from an actual arena and ask the crowd to stay for what we were going to recreate.
It was because we didn't know whether the Bruins were going to make the playoffs.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah,
we didn't know if the Bruins were going to make the playoffs.
So it was at the end of their season. We didn't know if they were going to make the playoffs. We'd have a little more flexibility, but we actually rushed into production to be able to make that game so that we could start production and assure ourselves that we got. Our approach was to make it as authentic as possible, shoot in as many real places, incorporate as many real people, to make it that much. That was something we tried to really recreate that. So it was intense, and we talked about the pros and cons of it, but it was like the anxiety actually served for the kind of panic attack that Jeff has, and so it ended up working creatively very well for us. I mean, we just jumped right in and did one of the biggest set pieces day one of the movie, which is ill-advised, but it ended up working out great for us, and it was...
But we weren't sure that people were going to stay. That was the other thing. I feel like everybody, Nicholas Stern, our incredible line producer, was so worried because we had all took a gamble. We had all said, like, okay, we're going to do these scenes, the scene in the elevator, and we're going to do the scene when we go out on the ice, but we need all these extras. We had put out all these radio calls, and we'd put out all these things to say, we're going to do this, and it's Jeff's story, and will you stay? And then the Bruins lost. And so I remember Nicholas Stern sort of having an internal freak out, like in the corner, like hoping that, and we didn't know if everyone was going to stay. And sure enough, they announced that we were going to film, and they said, this is a story, Jeff Bauman's story. They're filming this movie, and 3/4 of the stadium stayed. And they all came down for it, and I remember them screaming, at first, USA, right? They were screaming that. They wouldn't stop. They turned down the lights. And I don't know about you, Tatiana, but that was the moment where there was Kevin, and the real Kevin, and some of Jeff's family, and I think Kat was there too, because you're in the shot, Kat. I saw that last night because the screen was so big. I was like, that's Kat, remember? And you're like, really? And it was this moment where you started to realize the wave that you were about to ride. You know, the person who you know, at least I felt the duty that I had to play that part, and the people that he had touched. And that was that moment. It was like we had felt that a little bit through pre-production. We had spent a lot of time in preparation crazy preparation. But it wasn't until that moment. I remember turning to my left as you were wheeling me out, and there was Kevin up there, and there were tears in his eyes. And I was like, it's not really me. It's not Jeff, Kevin. No,
really
but it was an incredible moment. It was an incredible moment. This moment of doubt, just overwhelmed by this love for him and for the city. And I think that sort of just launched us into that day, into the whole rest of the shoot. It was pretty amazing.
As traditionally, I would start with Bruce Kirkland, right in the front here.
Thanks, Richard. Bruce Kirkland, Toronto Sun, and Postmedia News Network. And this is a question for Jake, Jeff, and David. And it's, because the film is not maudlin, because the film is human, does this help move the story of Jeff Bauman beyond being, quote, hero, which is that tricky word that's haunted you now for 3 years, and also move it beyond you being the icon of a tragedy? And how important was that for the three of you being focused on Jeff's story to do that?
I'll start with that. I mean, I think I personally was invited into this story because of a great screenplay that I felt for a guy that grew up in Texas in a very unrelatable atmosphere, but has been through some tough shit in my life and been involved in situations. I felt very relatable. I felt the story was very relatable, and that's what invited me into this. So on top of just the personal connection, the personal responsibility, and the authenticity we were trying to recreate, I jumped into this wanting to make a very relatable story to everyone in the audience and not make it so specific to this incident, but use that as a backdrop so that we could consider Jeff's frame of mind in the aftermath of an event like this, but after the headlines have faded in the shadows of an event like this, I think it's important to look at individuals and families and communities that do evolve, that do grow, that do empower from the negative events, the frustrating events, the catastrophic events that we're faced with. And so I just really started to sink into the beauty of the universal themes of Jeff's story. And I know that sounds weird because I'm also always, from a technical standpoint, trying to tap into the authenticity and the realness and the specificity of where we are, but it doesn't work unless it's for everyone in my mind.
Yeah, as you pointed out, I don't like being called a hero. In my eyes, there's heroes that I look up to. The people that saved my life, my caretakers, people at Boston Medical Center, my surgeon, the people that pulled me off that ground, got me out of there, Carlos, those are my heroes. The police, the paramedics, those are my heroes, and those are the true heroes. As Dave did this movie, Prince Avalanche. It's about Texas and wildfires and loss. People lost their homes, and I lost something. But I also, my heroes picked me up. Erin, Tatiana played Erin, my wife, the love of my life. She's my hero. Just being there with me, going through all that in the hospital. She's my hero. My mom's my hero. Miranda did great with my mom and what she did and how rough they are and the triangle between us three. Me sitting in the back of the car. That really happened. That brought me back. I'm yelling at both of them, trying to calm them both down, and it's like we'd be in my room sleeping, and my mom's banging on the door like hammered, and it's like she's still my hero, but Mike, go to bed. It's like there's heroes all around, and I just don't like being called it, but this movie covers everything. It covers loss, covers people picking each other up. It's amazing, and then they did a fantastic job, and Dave did an amazing job. And this isn't his first rodeo at that, though.
I have nothing to say after that.
Let's go right here. Yeah. Right behind you. Yep, right there. Yep.
Hi, I'm Nadine Yarafiti from South Africa Eyewitness News. Jeff, you obviously being reluctant, did it take a lot of convincing to know that you're going to have or to convince you to have a whole crew now come into your life to make this film? I mean, did you have moments of, can we stop for a second,
All the time.
And then Jake, can you, and the cast maybe just being involved in this, your idea and perception of what it means to be stronger. How did that change through this? Sorry, Jeff, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, having this crew and everything, it's like I have this camaraderie. It's like we're a team. Like with John, like he knows I need help up these stairs. There's no railing. He helped me up. It's like Jake always knows. Yeah, it's cool. It's like they got to know me enough that they know like I need help going down certain things, and it's like that's awesome. That's like where Big D and Sal would be, and they're here. So it's like my new crew. But yeah, it gets overwhelming. I'm not geared up for like getting thrown out on a red carpet like Jake is. And I'm like a deer in the headlights. What do I do? And they're like, walk. I'm like, ah. But yeah, I do need breaks, and I do, just kind of sit in an empty room sometimes. I love going home and like hanging out with my dog and my daughter, and that's amazing. Like that's what I live for. So it's a good balance of everything. That's what I think you need is a balance.
They opened it up to the cast. The idea of did it change what your idea of being strong is and being stronger?
Yeah. I think to me, there are all these ideas, but what I've seemed to see from Jeff and generally what I've learned from this movie is that being vulnerable, being open, and doing exactly just in the big macro of this movie, allowing his story to be told, which is a profound vulnerability, but in the little moments too, everything that he shares with you guys, which like about his family and their imperfections and the imperfections in himself, but also that makes him one of the strongest people that I know. And I think that's the common perception, and also I think something that is perpetuated in movies a lot about what strength is. A lot of people have asked me over my career in interviews with journalists, they've said, when we hear you almost played this superhero, or you were gonna when are you gonna do a superhero movie or something like that? And I feel like I finally kind of have, So to me, that's how I feel about him, because he's open, and he knows that in order to live, like he says in the movie, the character says in the movie, he has to show all those things. And he does every day, and he's a total inspiration to me.
Yeah, I think it's very much the same, that idea of infallibility being strength somehow. That strength, I think especially with female characters, it's often like they're strong because they either have masculine traits or are invincible or are whatever. There's all these kind of tropey things. But what I love about this story and what so struck me about it is the doubt that is in it, the love and hate coexisting, the just the unknown. I think that moment when we went out on the ice, being like, are we ready for this? Like, are we ready to step into these shoes? We were thrown in, before we really even knew, you know what I mean? And so that strength in the face of all of those question marks, I think, is what is strength to me, and what is more compelling and is a strong character or is a strong person.
I just think having some access to this story, which, let us not forget, is a daily story. It's ongoing. It doesn't finish with the movie. Is so shaking. Is so like, it's a duty to shape up and get on with your life and seize the day. And I need constant reminders to do that. It's awesome that Jeff is with us on this trip. I really pay tribute to you. I'm so happy you're on this with us. And I think to be stronger is something that you just continue to learn every day, and in many different ways. And if I can just relate it to the profession for a minute, I know I just want to challenge myself all the time and do something different and feel that you're making a contribution. I think storytelling is of prime importance. It always has been. It is more so now than perhaps any other time. You know, we're living in such strange times. So that's kind of what I have to say about that.
Let's go right here. Yeah.
Jan Price from iHeartRadio. This is for Miranda, Tatiana, and Jake. In bringing your characters to life, what was the most difficult part of creating and really portraying somebody that's living today? What was the most difficult part of bringing these characters to life?
I think initially for me, just shedding the idea, like what the film does is break down that idea of a hero. And for me, looking at Erin and sort of putting her on a pedestal as opposed to allowing for, like you were saying, all the flaws and all of the humanity of it, disassembling that and really finding the nuances of the emotional life and the complexity of this triangle, I think was the thing, shedding this sort of the nobility that I could put on somebody who I admire and who I revere, and instead defending every aspect of them was I think the most difficult for me.
I've never really cared about being likable, either in life or or in art. And I suppose if you I didn't see this in the script particularly, but you might expect that people would not like Patty. So I wanted to make sure that they understood Patty. I was striving for that, and but I enjoyed the journey of that. I hope people do empathize and understand, because it's there in the writing.
That's a very hard question to answer. I mean, this is it's a movie about community, in my opinion. It's a movie about a group of people that get each other through the unfathomable, and allowing that love in, that connection and that intimacy, the overwhelming nature of that almost every day in this story, and being in a position of playing someone who in yourself you probably would never have the strength to be in your real life. When I talk about, if I think about what's difficult, it's that I know that I probably wouldn't have been able to do what Jeff did in a way, though he would say, like he would say to anyone else, that you could. But I was faced every day with a sort of fraudulence, which was a great teacher to me. And I would just say, this community of people this group of people is some of the hardest working people I've ever worked with. I mean, that's the spirit, I know, in a lot of ways of Boston. It's the spirit of what got Jeff through, and he works hard every day to make sure that he can get stronger and walk faster. But I have to say, this group of people, along with all the other people who you don't see up here, who made this thing happen, are some of the hardest work. To get this movie made and to have it get to where it is, to be here today, to be talking about it, is pretty incredible. And I'm grateful for that, I just say. And that was kind of difficult at times. And I really love all these people.
We just have time for a couple of more questions, so I'll ask that if you direct them to specific people rather than to the entire panel, so we can get through a couple more. We'll go here.
Hi, Barbara Dudinska, Sita News Agency. I have 2 questions, very quick one.
Let's make it one question.
Okay, so let's do a bit lighter note. Are we witnessing a bromance scene happening between Jeff and Jake? I feel like Jeff and Jake, that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
I can't feel that.
The bromance blossomed on set. And there was a question here somewhere? No? Yeah, right here. Yeah.
Victoria Gibson, Toronto Star. My question is for Jeff and John. This is obviously...
We're going to just keep it down to one.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to direct it to John then. This is obviously a very visceral experience. What's it like trying to put that to paper?
Wow. You know, man, it's really, really hard to write a good screenplay. You should try it. It's no, I mean, look, man, it's hard because you dance around the gore and the awful elements of it. So integral, and to not exploit it, and it's crucial to the story. You know, that was the whole thing. Is in Jeff. I mean, look, not everybody makes a movie of their life, and he was very much, as hard as it was. His whole thing was like, I think my story can help people. Just go for it, and you know, that was it. It was to harness all of these really visceral ideas, and the script evolved, you know, as we went, and you know, working with when David and Jake and I would sit in a room, and he had some really awesome ideas as to how to make that work as a movie, and to evolve and to go into the way that it is there. It doesn't. I mean, to me, it doesn't feel like exploitive. It feels like part of the story. But that was not easy, and a lot of people, I think there was a constant question as to how do you show that without making it exploitation, and I think we worked really hard, and I think it worked. Does that answer your question?
There's an amazing scene that you wrote that initially wasn't in the draft we were shooting, and I hadn't seen because it's very early. He did draft after draft of the screenplay. I mean, draft after draft. There were ones found in a vault while we were shooting where we'd be desperate, and we'd call up Polano and be like, "What about this situation? You know anything about it?" And he'd be like, "Hold on, I think I got something." And then you'd get this scene, the scene where the bandages are being removed. That scene that you wrote, that you sent that day. I remember that day getting that scene. Some of the most beautiful dialogue taken from some of what happened between Jeff and Aaron in that moment, but also his feelings about that moment. I mean, it's one of the most beautifully written kind of interactions between two people, and I remember that so specifically like this.
It was only like a quarter of a page, and it's like a 2.5-minute scene. It's incredible, and it really was. Jeff actually said that, you know, in that moment when his bandages were coming off, I was like, "What was going on in your head?" And he just said, I just didn't want Aaron to see what my legs looked like. And you barely even hear the dialogue, but the heart of that is what that whole moment is about, is, you know, and Aaron is saying that too. There were a couple of moments where she just said, "I knew if I like freaked out that it would break his heart." And that's what that moment is Jeff saying, you know, just make this about me, and the connection and the way it was shot. I mean, that scene taught me more about like writing movies than anything, where it just encapsulates the whole movie in that. And again, it's a quarter of a page. And it's the most beautiful, to me, it's the most effective part of the whole movie, because everybody is clicking and creating that amazing truth of that moment.
Gentlemen, one more right there. Yep, go ahead.
Jake, this is for you. At the beginning, you said that your friendship with Jeff really came from the hard questions that you asked him. So what was the one question that you really struggled with asking him, and what was that conversation like? And sorry, I'm Makta with CBC News.
Well, you know, it's not the big ones that you expect, I think. They're the little ones where you're faced with potential embarrassment or shame, or have I pushed him too far? And one of the big things for me, I needed to know from the beginning of the movie, was really very important to me. And this is where I remember I was texting with you, and I said, what shoes were you wearing that day? And I remember, like,
I sent you a picture.
You sent me a picture. We couldn't really remember the exact pants, but they were your favorite pants.
That's the hardest thing, because when the bomb went off, I saw like my feet in my shoes, and you know, he's asking me about it, and I have to tell him, because I want it to be authentic.
I remember that. Yeah, that was that. I think in that moment I was like, it's that moment where you go, well, what exactly are we doing? You know, like what are we trying to get to? And it became because it's a very important thing that be right to me, and that moment was that one. I have to say that was probably this weird mundane moment that was very tough to ask.
And my favorite pair of pants, my $20 chinos from Costco. It's like.
And we looked everywhere for those pants after that. I mean, literally everywhere. And we got as close as we could to the color and to all those things. But I think that was the moment where I realized how brave he was. You know, because it's not just it's not just all the things that we think about. It's the ability to go to places like that, to go back and to understand that and to face that and to resolve that. Is like again, talking about what strength is, like it's in those moments. It's in those little moments.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey!